Good morning, everyone. Today in sunny Binghamton on Tuesday, I'm thinking about stories. I think a lot about stories, and you know that I think about stories because I write about them all the time. Stories is a really small word about a really big subject. And we're going to talk about stories and girls and reinvention and how to recognize your story and bring your story to life today. This is Yvonne DeVita. This is Smart Women Conversations on Nurturing Big Ideas. And today I'm welcoming Ellen Langas as my guest. She is the founder of newsoma.com, and we're going to talk about her Girls Know How series of books. But let me tell you a little bit about her right now. So after working with corporate giants Westinghouse and Corning Glassworks, and Ellen, when I saw that, it was like, well, Corning, everybody here, I live in Binghamton, Corning is
Right.
a skip and a jump. And I used to take my kids there when they were,
Love that.
Corning Glassworks is just a phenomenal place, everyone.
I lived on Steuben Street.
How awesome is that? So let's go back. After a simple turn of the page of the Sunday newspaper changed Ellen's career trajectory forever. You see, this is what we talk about, ladies. A simple act of just turning the page in the Sunday newspaper. The article headline read, "Do you want to be a television host?" Why, yes, she did. And in spite of considerable advice to the contrary, oh, Ellen, I know what that's like. She scheduled an audition. She dropped out of the corporate world and she took a position with an unknown startup. Today, we know that as the billion-dollar company QVC Inc. Ellen went on to gain national visibility as an original program host and consumer spokesperson at the company. She became a member of the executive leadership team and originated the public relations department. In 1995, she broke out on her own to launch Newsoma Communications, Inc., a full-service branding, communications, and public relations company, which she presides over today. And now I'm going to turn it over to Ellen. Ellen, welcome, because yes, I would like you to talk about how your Greek upbringing took you where you are now.
Well, I think today when we're talking about stories, we all have a story growing up, don't we? And I think anyone who might have that ethnic background is going to really commiserate with me. Being with my father coming from Greece and my mom also being Greek, we didn't have that story book kind of beginning, I think. But we didn't really have the advice or guidance that many children look for. And probably a role model, we didn't have that, the type of role model to think about, gee, what might I want to be when I grow up? My folks pretty much felt that being a secretary was what my sister and I would be. So that was our career guidance, not a choice. It was just, this is what we think would be good for you, and then get married. And so it's funny because my older sister, 3 years ahead of me, pretty much followed those guidelines. The one silver lining to everything, or a saving grace, was my father worked for a college. He was director of the maintenance department. And so we had the opportunity to go to college. Both of us in the top portion of our classes, but nobody ever suggested go off to college or think about a career. So my sister went to school for 2 years, got her associates, and did become a secretary. And while I knew my shorthand and typing, I decided to go the marketing route. But I have to be honest, Yvonne, it was when I decided I want to graduate school. If you ever saw my big fat Greek wedding, then you understand you ruined the family. And moving out was even more devastating to the family. But of course, when you're brought up that way, you believe that's true. And of course, my sister and I both thought we pretty much were ruining the family, and we were very naive when we went out on our own. The first time I moved up to upstate New York was the first time I had been away from home. So I guess the little takeaway from this whole thing when you're talking about your story is have to take some risks and change the trajectory of your story. And that's pretty much what I would say I did.
I think you were pretty brave. And I say that because I too, I think I'm quite a bit older than you, but so it was even more ingrained in my house. In my house, it was understood that my brother would go to college, but my sister and I had no need of college. Again, we were just going to get married. And I determined not to get married because I didn't like children. And interestingly, because as a babysitter, I was like, why would anybody do this? But
unless they're paid for it.
right. And I was so naive that I determined that because I wasn't going to get married, therefore I had to get a job. I didn't think about a career because that wasn't something that you thought about. No one talked about girls having a career. It
Right.
was get something, a job. Well, I was a writer and I wanted to be a writer, but I was told writers didn't make any money. And so I was cautioned to go do something else. So I became an animal technologist and worked in a veterinary office. But I want to hear more about what happened next. I mean, you were brave. I think you were very brave, you and your sister. And now here you turn that page in the Sunday newspaper and decided, well, I'm going to do this new challenging, interesting thing. Maybe that's why. Why did you decide that was what the risk that you wanted to take? What was it about that?
My guess is because I really couldn't tell you because I was doing very well in the corporate world,
Mhm.
and I liked it, frankly. But I know that when I even started college, I was only able to enroll in what they had. It was a very small school at the time. Today, it's a large university, but at the time, I just had to follow that business route, and I didn't feel that in my heart. And when I saw that article, of course, this was the day of Vanna White back then, and the
Yes.
real estate. And I thought, oh, TV. Why, yes, that's what I want to do. And I think it had always been a bug in the back of my mind. And this seemed to be a way to bring that to fruition. Well, I had never seen TV shopping. And frankly, the only thing out there was Home Shopping Network. I'd already taken the job by the time I saw it. I'd gone down to my folks' place in Florida and they had it there. And I was a little bit mortified because back then, that was over 30 years ago, they had honking horns and
Yep.
chain devices. And I thought, oh, whoopsie daisies.
What did I do?
But when I started, the company just had a little chalk mark on the floor and said, this is going to be a studio. And none of us had been on TV really before. And I think that's what made it so good because just like you and I are talking, that's how we went on the air. And I think that real conversation, building those relationships is what marketing really is and should all be about. And I think that's what I found when we're talking about our stories again was you had to really think on your feet. You had 7 minutes maybe product after product to be able to concisely tell that story, not from what you're thinking about it, but why is this important or have a benefit for the person who's looking at it. So that was really, really very interesting. But it was a risk. QVC was only part-time back then, so I had to get a little another job. I took about a 25% cut to take this. But when you start from the beginning, there were only 100 of us, less than 100 of us when I started. And to be able to help nurture that company and our own careers as we went
Mhm.
and learn and do that together, it was a fabulous experience. I know the day they said, oh, we're going to be moving the warehouse, they meant we are going to be moving the warehouse. So we would get off the air and then we'd go right to the phones and take orders. And It was exciting. It was really
That's
exciting.
very interesting. And I'm glad that we got that, that part of the story, because when someone, and this is for you especially, ladies, but you're saying to yourself, I have this really big idea, or, you know, an opportunity comes, falls kind of in your lap, a suggestion, and you're thinking, oh, should I do it? And then if you decide yes, you're going to do it, I say, and a lot of other women have told similar stories to yours, where when you say yes, you're going to do it, you become that jack of all trades, because you don't just do this one little part that you know. Granted, I want people to do those talented, creative things they love, but you have to also answer the phone. You have to also learn sales. You have to also be aware of how social media works today. Those are the kinds of things. And it isn't just, I'll relate it to my expertise writing a book. It isn't just sitting there at the computer and putting the words on the paper. There's so much behind it that is involved. So here you were. And I think also, if we look back, Ellen, in the story that you're telling and how you got to do all those things, the experiences, the camaraderie, the things that you had the benefit of at the time, rather than just walking into an office and plopping down at a desk and this is where you sat all day and this is what you did. You
Yeah.
had a lot of, I want to say, relationship building internally and learning from this. And where, at what point then did you decide to start New Soma?
Well, actually, Yvonne, I would like to just dovetail on what you were just talking about, this idea of making your future. You hit on that beautifully, and that happened at QVC too. At the time, we didn't have a public relations department.
Mhm.
And although I had never done public relations, I'd been in marketing all my years and had some background in that area. And I decided to propose that I spearhead the public relations department.
Excellent.
And I put together a whole proposal and I took it into the CEO, Joe Siegel, the founder of QVC, and left it for him. And I was always nervous around him. And I have to mention, there was all, the management was all men and myself and another woman. That was it. So we were a
Wow.
little younger. So it was rather intimidating to me. And he said, excellent proposal, but I don't really like the way you write. And that's all he said. So in my mind, he didn't exactly say no.
Mhm.
So I just started doing it. I put together a press list. I put together some story ideas. I put together press releases. And the next thing you know, people just assumed I was doing it. And that's how I became an officer and the vice president of public relations at QVC at the time. And then it was really because the company was bought, but Barry Diller came in and brought in his whole
Wow.
regime from New York, which was understandable. That happens.
Yep.
Um,
Mhm.
but however, at the same time, I had just had my second child. It was a very difficult pregnancy, and I was out for almost 6 months.
Wow.
So things had changed dramatically, and I had some um, needs at home to be taken care of. I had a 17-month-year-old and a 1-year-old, I'm sorry, a newborn. And so the best thing was to go out on my own. I'm pleased to say, though, that QVC has remained a client since then. So for the past 25 years now. But that was the impetus to go out.
Wow. Well, I love that part of the story, because you, again, were pretty brave. Um, and maybe I'm sitting here thinking, if someone had said they didn't like my writing, I was a very needy writer, and I would have gone home and cried. Now, I would then have proceeded to prove that I was a good writer, and
And you would have.
right, exactly, because I did at that point in that point of time, um, study, and that's what I did. I said, well, I always thought I was a great writer because I was told so, but then I realized, you know, there's so much about writing I still need to learn. And so I went back to school and I studied it. But I love that part of the story because I see women doing that, um, taking that charge and doing it kind of similar to what you just described doing. It's the only, at that time, it kind of was the only pathway for women, because women still at that point weren't being, promoted and treated as equals. I'm not going to say women were treated bad. There were places I'm sure they were. But the point of the matter is you took charge. You decided, well, he didn't say no, so I'm just going to go and do it. And you enjoyed doing it. And so now, then you became Nusoma.
And,
And
with Newsoma, I have to say how I started was on a card table, as 8 tracks are to MP4 players now, I had the Rolodex as what is email now. So it was a really rough start. But I wanted to mention too, when I started my company, I thought it was really important that this company would represent a philosophy that I had about how to project media relations and public relations. So we've grown into a full service marketing, public relation, and branding firm. And we represent from individuals and emerging companies, as well as corporations of all different business sectors. But the name of the company comes from my Greek heritage. Nous represents your mind, soma or body. So the synergy of mind and body is nusoma, is not just a word. It's really our philosophy about doing a holistic approach to marketing, because it's a very tall order to be able to come up with messaging that's going to satisfy your stakeholders, your customers, motivate them, meet all your sales goals, and then also be mindful of the regional and national conversation, the social conversation that's going on. And so that's what we hoped to create, and that is what we've created.
This is really, like, I'm sitting here going, this is what my husband Tom is all about, because he wants people to understand your mind and your body work together. And it's, reading is fundamental to your health, not just your education or your intelligence. That's wonderful. And how thoughtful was that to think about putting Nusoma together as the name of the company? And I have to tell you that I didn't, until you told me, know what it meant. But it's a word that is very, kind of soft on the tongue. And when I say Nusoma, I thought to myself that I love the word approachable. So it's kind of an approachable word. It's kind of a word that made me think that this is a company and Ellen is a person who isn't thinking about Ellen. She's also thinking about me. And that's kind of where I want people to understand that the stories that we have and the stories that we tell, while they may be about us, or we may invent stories that, as we're taught to write what you know, may be about things that we know, they're for someone else to read or experience. And I think that's kind of where I love these stories and how we get to Girls Know How. Talk to me about Girls Know How.
Well, the premise behind Girls Know How is to inspire and motivate girls to explore and pursue the careers of their dreams. And it was born out of probably my background, not having had that opportunity to have those role models, or really even contemplate, gee, could I see myself in that role? And then also, when I had my children, I have 2 daughters who are grown now, but really around that same age, I think they were 6 and 8, right around then, when the notion came to me to do that, because I wanted not to repeat history, Yvonne. I wanted to be able to change history and make sure that this generation grew up really being able to see themselves, to explore careers and see themselves in those different roles.
Well, yes, and it's big kind of business now. It's very My daughter is my granddaughter, Frankie. I talk about her all the time. I tell people she dresses me for my videos. And then we have in the background, I don't know if it's Strong is the New Pretty, the book
Oh,
that,
I love that. Yeah.
yes. And so those of us who have daughters and granddaughters, and it's not meant to exclude our sons or grandsons or whatever, or brothers, it's meant to help girls continue to believe in themselves, because I'm sure, Ellen, you know that girls get to a certain age and suddenly science isn't, even if they're good at it, it's not, they don't do it anymore, or math or whatever.
It's true. We did a lot of research. And first of all, I will mention we own Boys Know How. We have Boys Know How and Girls Know How.
Good. Good.
When we did the research for the book series itself, at that age, our books are for ages elementary school, pretty much 7 to 12. I was told time and time again, this is not the type of books at that age that books are moving toward, or boys are moving toward. And also, you write what you know. And I have these two daughters. Speaking of which, evidently you changed your mindset about liking children again at some point in your life, based on the fact that
I did. I have 3 of them, and yes, I did.
The research shows that children are on an even playing field up until the age of about 12. At that point, they have the goals, the ambitions, etc. It's middle school when things go a little haywire, and girls swap that enthusiasm, that leadership, for more of that social connections and body consciousness. And then all of a sudden, believe it or not, those little tweaks can change your trajectory, because, gee, maybe I'm not going to take honors math. Instead, I'm going to do the cool thing or what have you. Now we see that changing, and I'm thrilled to see girls getting to the sciences. But if you look at, for instance, the Forum of Executive Women here in the Philadelphia region just came out with their Women in Leadership report, and it was astounding to see only 2 female CEOs out of the 100 top companies. We're not even close to our 30% goal to have women in the C-suites and on boards. And so that's where you need that, I'm sorry for the word, but almost that pipeline that you have to start early. So I felt that the time to start isn't in college. Of course, it's always a good time, but the time is when they're young, and it's the layered messaging. So this book isn't necessarily going to change someone's trajectory, but if you're hearing it at school, if you're seeing it in an ad, you're seeing diversity in an ad, you're seeing a female, in this case for construction, you're seeing a female head of a national construction company, and she also happens to be an owner of a national baseball team, a Major League Baseball team. Then you're going to have those layered messages that you start thinking, I could do that.
Well, are the books offered in libraries?
They're in libraries, not nationwide at this point. They're on our website at girlsknowhow.com. They're on QVC, which I'm really proud to have. So you can go to QVC. There's a 3-pack there, and I've signed one of them. And of course, I always personalize books when they're purchased through our website when I mail them out. But any library or school that wishes to have them, we're always glad to make those arrangements. We also do free career adventure workshops for girls.
I was going to ask.
Yeah, I love doing that. I've done them all over the country, mostly in my region, but now virtually as well. I'm going to be doing one for the Girl Scouts very shortly. And there we learn about what the books are telling us. And those are messages. And we do it interactive when we're in person, but those are the skills that are necessary, and they're lifestyle skills. They're not just career skills, but thinking about the hard work you have to put in to succeed. And that is learning about leadership, about teamwork, about communication skills, how you're interacting, learning about being mindful of the environment and the social environment as well, and giving back. And that works not only as a youngster, but you know, Yvonne, as well as I do, once you're into your company, you have that responsibility. And I think as women, we have that responsibility to mentor and sponsor other women and men, and we do that, mentoring men and women in their careers, because I am just a passionate career education advocate.
Well, I really feel that some of the power with the books and the purpose and what you're doing is helping girls not lose the enthusiasm or the desire, but finally in these stories, I mean, if we look at these, each one of these has 3 girls on the cover. They're not one girl. And we don't live in a world where, yes, one person can make a difference, but that one person makes the difference by working with a whole bunch of other people. That one person can do so much more in the company and with and collaborating with other people. So it's more than one. And while I look at the opportunity here as moms and dads and aunts and uncles and grandmas to be able to keep encouraging the girls to not, I don't quite know how to express it, because I know how deeply the social peer group acceptance is, especially for girls. I know that kind of gets in the way sometimes, but if we can get this to the point where more girls are learning and continuing to enter competitions for science and technology, not looking at science and technology as something that's only for boys. And then my point being, the more girls do it, the more girls can see that other girls are doing this. So it's not something I should leave behind.
I'm glad you brought that up because, first of all, just to put some a background about how these books work, is they're fictional. They're fictional chapter books, and I picked that up easily when I watched my girls reading voraciously. The chapter books was where it was at. You don't have to read them in some order. So the first one introduces journalism, the second one construction, the third one we came out with was teaching, because we did a survey of 1,000 boys and girls, and believe it or not, that was the number one thing that girls were saying that they want to be. And at that age, they've all seen it, so that made sense. And then this last one, all things STEM. But in each book, the characters are exactly what you said. Almost any girl could identify with these characters because they've got all their own little problems, and they do have some butting of heads. And so we learn together, how did she overcome that? What did she use? And how did mom and dad, or in some cases, there is not a mom. We have a diverse background for these books. So everyone comes from a different socioeconomic background, so that you can really have a realistic overview of what their life is. But within each book, there is also a character based on a real life female successful role model in that field.
Oh.
And at the back of the book, we do a Girls Want to Know interview with her. So girls can see, how did she get to where she was? What schooling did she have? What were her, I don't know, some of the fun facts behind it? For one of them, one of the women in the book, she was a daughter of and had all brothers, and she wasn't even allowed to compete as a girl in the high jump contest. And her mom marched to that school and said, my daughter's going to, and she won it. So we learn things like that. And in the back of the book, there are fun activities to sort of map out, what could you do to learn about a career? And then at girlsknowhow.com, there are free downloads as well. So we try and give you a whole overview, not just one story.
I'm just blown away because it's so necessary. It's been necessary since you and I were girls, and how might life been different if we'd had, the ability to not just have the books, but to see actual real life examples. And it was harder back then because there weren't a lot of women doing some of the things that we see. Today, there are so many women who have have stories that they can share. And and that's what this is about, Ellen. That's what this video, this offering that I do with these smart conversations, it's about helping the women who watch learn something and take it then back to where they can become the success in whatever field or endeavor or creative thing that they've chosen to do. But then how much more powerful to go that next step and mentor a child.
I think that's very, very important. And I also think, just by the way, with your saying, I think this is a fabulous format that you put together. But I don't know, Yvonne, if you thought the same thing, but when you're asking me these questions and I hear myself answering you, I think I learn a lot, because how many of us take the time to think about our own story and how the trajectory was? And frankly, as much as we might say, oh, we had a little bit tough, because of our backgrounds, I think everyone listening and watching today probably has their own story. But how much did it benefit us by having to get that grit and having to get that perseverance? Whereas somebody who just sort of had the easy trajectory may not have picked up. So I think we all have to be very thankful and proud of whatever our background was and how we got to where we are. It might not have turned out exactly right, but I think we've all done well with it.
I think you're so. I said in a recent Facebook post in a group that I belong to that, I wanted to be a writer. I once thought that I would be a writer, and then I became a writer. And I wanted to write the great American novel. I wanted to be a famous fiction author. Today, I am a writer. I may not yet have written the great American novel, and things didn't turn out the way I thought, but I'm a writer and I'm happy. And I did accomplish that goal. And to your point, it didn't turn out the way I thought it would, but I don't regret it one bit.
Well, but I'll say yet. But,
Yet.
and I think that's why, as our company, New Soma, our tagline is actually, it's time to tell your story. And I think in everything we've talked today, we sort of wrap that up almost with a bow when you think about it, from the risks and changes that we've had to do as youngsters and changing our trajectory. You're changing your story. We always are changing our story. And then as I went into QVC and learned how to tell that story, find that messaging that was so succinct. And then with New Soma, when you think about how to amplify your story, and then right back to where you just said, now tell your story, just like you've written a story. However you're going to tell that story, it might be time to do that.
Yes, and I love that you're doing workshops. We don't have time to talk about those, but maybe you can come back and we can talk about them, because I want people to learn that, yes, now you are here, and I love the tagline, it's time to tell your story, because that's what I say all the time also, if not now, when, if not you, who. But the powerful thing that I want people to take away is that your story will change someone's life. Your story will offer inspiration. You may think it is just this ordinary thing, like you said, oh, everybody had those difficult childhoods. I don't want to get into that. Well, maybe there's something in that story that's going to help someone else achieve something that would make their life better. So you need to tell those stories. Now, the workshops, maybe next time we can get back to that, because I want people to see that that's maybe a next step, is now once you've told your story, maybe now you need to develop a way to teach people how you told it and how they might tell theirs.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Well, Ellen Langas, newsoma.com, and Girls Know How. This has been, I'm going to put this back down to the other view, because I really want people to see that these books, This is not the only reason Ellen's here. Ellen's here because you heard the really great story that she told. But in the end, ladies, no one said it was easy. Parts of it will be easy. Parts of it will, right, Ellen? Parts of it are easy.
A lot of it is fun.
Yes, and you can make it fun. And there are ways. There are ways. You are not alone. This is Yvonne DeVita. This has been Smart Women Conversations with Ellen Langas from newsoma.com and Girls Know How. And I will see you next time. Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure for you, for me, and to your viewers. Thank you.